Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So we're in the chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam which is called The Perfect Society for Social Classes. And as we heard from His Holiness Chandramali Maharaj yesterday, that it describes, the verses as we progress, they describe the four social orders. Namely the Shudras, the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, and the Brahmanas, their occupational duties, and how they can function together as a whole society perfectly, who has which duties and how they should perform them. And in this way, the society can become peaceful and prosperous and happy society within the material world. This is Krishna's system. And Maharaj quoted the Bhagavad Gita about the Chaturvarnyam, the verse that describes that Krishna has set this system. And when Ramananda Roy was asked by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the evolution of the perfect knowledge, he starts, the basis of the first answer was about Varnashrama, because this is the foundation of human civilization. From that, the knowledge is develops further and further, meaning the spiritual knowledge, can be only really cultivated in a society like that. And in this way, everyone becomes happy, actually, because the transcendental duties are the same for human beings. We can all chant the Hare Krishna mantra, we can all chant Kirtan together, and it doesn't matter, which varnas or even ashramas we are, we're all united in that moment. And ultimately, that is highest truth, that we're all spirit souls. And in that sense, we're all equals. Even the brahmanas who have the knowledge, they see equally the brahmana, the shudra, the meat eater, the dog eater, the dog, the elephant. So the vision is the same. It doesn't mean that he will go and sit down with the dog to eat together. That's not the equality. The equality is that he understands who we are in essence, that we are spirit soul. And with that, there's a proper respect. The, the actual brahmanas, they're not puffed up, having their nose up, I'm the highest order, you're the lowest. The perfect exhibition of who is actually a real brahmana, and the Vaishnava is a topmost brahmana, was exhibited by Srila Prabhupada himself when he was giving class in Sweden. And there was a students had the rebellious spirit, especially back then in 60s and 70s. And so Srila Prabhupada was giving exactly the class on the four orders. He was explaining the four avarnas. And then the student said, so you sit in here, he stood up and said, oh, you sit in here on this upper seat and you're teaching us. So you must be that first order, right? And we are those lower orders that you speak. And Prabhupada, with genuine, utter humility, he wasn't like playing it or something. The tear came out of his eyes. And said, no, 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 I'm the fifth class. I'm the fifth class because I'm serving you all. I'm the servant of all classes. So this is how Vaishnava feels, and his compassion drives him to give the Lord's mercy upon all. And here Srila Prabhupada explains, of course, this is seventh canto, so the movement was already spread, and there are problems already with the caste brahmanas in India. And Srila Prabhupada had this dilemma because in the Western world he was considered very conservative, whereas in India at that time he was considered way too much liberal, giving Brahmin initiations to mlechas, yavanas, women, etc., and engaging them in the Brahminical services, worshiping the deities, preaching, that is that. So there were two polarization in one sense. It still is in one sense. But Srila Prabhupada was having as an acharya, he had a greatest vision what is needed right now for the society. Because if the ship is sinking, it doesn't matter, like, and say the captain is, I don't know, fainted, right? And the ship is sinking. It doesn't matter who will take charge at the moment of the steer wheel and the other devices on that boat to keep the boat afloat. Otherwise, everybody will die. So if he's lieutenant or he's, whoever is lower in rank in the navy, I'm not sure about this terminology in English, but so whoever else takes charge to save the ship at that moment is doing the beneficial work if he's trained at least a little bit. And as we know, yes, of course, we should take shelter of the highest, the topmost Vaishnavas. That would be our benefit. We should immediately take, you know, shelter of such Vaishnavas when they're around. But if they're not, it doesn't mean we have to stop the practice. It doesn't mean we have to stop reading and chanting Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, we will benefit more if self-realized soul, as Narada Muni speaks on Srimad Bhagavatam. But at least if we have an attempt to repeat the message as it is, as we have heard it from those self-realized souls, yes, we still benefit. But of course, we know the difference when we are in the presence of an acharya like Srila Prabhupada. Everybody becomes Krishna conscious within seconds, even by observing such great souls, how they sit, how they eat, how they drink water. I remember Srila Prabhupada disciples were telling me, we were becoming Krishna conscious even by observing how Srila Prabhupada drinks the water. That's how powerful, because they are like a blazing fire of Krishna consciousness wherever they come. I remember 6 years ago, I lived here for 5 years, and now we are a year and a half away. So about 6 years ago, there was one person who came to visit Gita Nagari, and I, showed him around, and he said, I saw Srila Prabhupada once in my life. I said, yes, well, please share. And he said, there was a temple, I forgot which temple he mentioned, but Srila Prabhupada just arrived, and I saw this figure coming out of the car, and everybody were bowing down. So I bowed down as well. That was his first ever sight of Srila Prabhupada, first interaction. He didn't even have a clue what Hare Krishna movement is all about. But he bowed down to Srila Prabhupada. Like he said, it was so irresistible. You couldn't stop it. Not just because everybody else is doing it, but that wave to show respect to such personality was so strong that he didn't even know who that is or what is going on. But he did it very spontaneously. And then he said, I don't know what is this, so I just been there for a few moments. And then later on he was a hippie, so he was going to West Coast of America. And then there was a minivan coming. And the devotees were there and said, hey, do you want to ride? As the devotees were picking up, because he was trying to hitchhike. So they took him on board and they brought him to temple. So he did some service in LA temple for about a week or so in the kitchen, helping cutting veggies like that. And he had some good association with devotees there. And then he left, and that's it. That was it for his life in terms of association with devotees and practicing Krishna consciousness. Yet, closer to I don't want to say end of his life, he's still alive, I hope, but he's in his, 60s, 70s. So he came here and said, I don't know why, but I keep going to those temples, and bowing down to Srila Prabhupada in every temple, ISKCON temple, because I cannot get it out of my system. That one samskara, seeing the pure devotee of the Lord, and Paripashnana Sevaya, Pranipad. He did the Pranipad, he did the respects, one of those three that you're supposed to do when you meet, you know, Tadvidhi pranipatana paripashtana seva upadikshantiti gyanam gyaninas tattva darshana. That when you come to a person who has seen the truth, and Srila Prabhupada not only has seen the truth, he has heard the truth, he has, he has this very special relationship with the absolute truth, with Krishna, the personality of God. So that person just cannot understand what's going on with him, but he's dragged to those places. It's like a nostalgia feeling for him because he was young, but Paramdrishta Nivartate, he has this higher taste that was infused to him with that small interaction. So, such persons as Srila Prabhupada, Parivrajakacharyas, that travel the world to give Krishna consciousness, to enlighten others, and to plant those seeds of Krishna consciousness is so important because, as Prabhupada explains here in this last purport, that this emergency situation, you have to understand how bad it is. Once Prabhupada said, Kali Yuga is so bad. They weight you with a knife before you even get born, referring to abortions. How cruel this society is in Kali Yuga. Ruthless, cruel, uh, envious, constant fighting. Prabhupada used to say, like cats and dogs, fighting all the time. And those purports we read that Prabhupada written 50 years ago, they're as relevant today as anything. I was rereading the first canto last year, verse by verse. I have a YouTube channel, so I give classes every day, just short ones, just to keep that habit going that we have to hear every day, showing an example. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, he's talking about China and India conflict back then in 70s, sorry, not in 70s, 60s, when he was writing the first canto. And when you read this purport, it's like you can just change India and Pakistan to, sorry, India and China to, I don't know, Russia, Ukraine, to Iran, Israel. You can just change the names. It would be exactly the same. Everything is the same. The nature of this world in Kali Yuga is absolutely identical. And it's important to understand this because when Vidura approaches Maitreya Muni, and he was infused by Uddhava to hear about the Lord, his pastimes, his glories. He was so eager to hear it from Maitreya Muni. He wanted to take shelter of Uddhava. Uddhava said, no, I'm much younger in age. There's Maitreya Muni. He has received the same knowledge from Supreme Personality of God. You go to him. So he went to Hardwar. But what is he asking? He was eager to hear the absolute knowledge, the absolute truth from Maitreya Muni. He wanted to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet what he starts with? He starts with questions for the benefit of all beings. He's asking how he refers to karmis. Sometimes say it, but karmis, at least they were following the injunctions of the Vedas. Nowadays, a society, no idea they do. It's absolutely topsy-turvy. But he's asking those persons who are hankering after happiness in this material world, yet this happiness is always running away from them. Bless you. So how to attain the real happiness for the society. So he's asking the questions for the benefit of all beings. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport in the third canto, this is verse number 2, I think, in the first chapter, 352. So there he asks about, the Prabhupada comments in the purport that Vidura could have asked the questions he had on his heart, but out of humility and out of his meek nature, he started with the questions to help others because they need to understand. And Prabhupada says that the subject matter about Supreme Personality of Godhead is very high. It's difficult to understand. But we need to understand how this world also functions, how this external energy, the three gunamai, how this is working first, so that the society in general can understand what actually forces them to act in certain ways. In other words, there's a diagnosis we have to get that we are conditioned souls, we can be covered by the external energy of the Lord. It's very powerful. It's Daivi Hesha Gunamai, Amamaya Duratiya. It's very difficult to overcome it. unless you take shelter of the person who is the Sarvakarana Karna, who is the source of all the energies, including external and internal and external, and the in between, the Tasta Shakti also. So, this is how great souls, Mahatmas, are. That's why they're so surdulabha, they're so rare to meet. Out of thousands, there's only one who even tries to study the subject matter of transcendental truth. And out of thousands of such, only one really realizes it, gets the Vijnana. So when Maitreya Muni came to Krishna, he actually was not a pure devotee of the Lord. But by observing how Uddhava speaks with Krishna, and how Krishna imparts the knowledge, and how he interacts with him, how he's smiling, how he's thinking of him, how they have this loving exchange, by just hearing their conversation, he's getting enlightened right at the moment about the Bhagavan aspect, right? It's the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam that starts Brahmati Paramatmati Bhagavan iti Shabdate, that yes, there are three features of the Supreme, but this highest is Bhagavan. And to understand it is not so easy, even for great yogis, even for great munis, because it's inconceivable. You take, Sri Upanishad, and it says in fifth verse, it says that the Lord has, many forms that he has. He can walk at the same time. He doesn't have legs. It just can confuse the jnanis like anything about the nature of the Supreme. But unless we have the purpose by pure devotees where they explain, yes, the Krishna's form is such that he can do anything and anything with any of his limbs, and his energies are working in this way, on his order, on his desire, then we can gradually understand, not realize, understand. And at some point, when we, Bhakti Mama Bijanati, when we continue serving the Lord and the devotees of the Lord, then gradually by that service only, we can get the Divya in our heart, the realization about the Supreme. And the Krishna system is such that, yes, there's four orders, but then the highest is actually the Vaishnavas, those who realize the Lord. And then it actually doesn't matter from which Varna they came from, because ultimately our constitutional position is that we are the eternal servant, Gopi Bhartu Padakamalaya Dasa Dasa Dasa. This is our constitutional position. And if that person have realized the Supreme, then he can give the knowledge, transcendental knowledge to anyone. And the fine point is that we don't understand, we don't know who is next to us, right? We can think it's just Bhakta, this and that, but it could be Narada Muni right next to you. We just don't know, because the river of Bhakti flows very deep in the heart, and it's not so very easily detected. Yes, we can detect the age, and at least we can, learn the etiquette and how Uddhava did, Maryada particular, that if somebody's elderly, you should ask them to speak and like that. But then there's exceptions. When Shukadeva Goswami enters the assembly of devotees of different sages and Maharaj Parikshit, everybody stands up to greet him and pay respects, apart from Narada Muni and Srila Vyasadeva, because they are, after all, his father and spiritual master of his father. So the etiquette was followed properly. At the same time, they left there to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami. They didn't leave the arena. Okay, we know enough. No, because it became even sweeter because he's a self-realized soul, the topmost of the Vaishnavas. So yes, sometimes somebody can be much younger in age, but he can, we don't know. The soul is eternal, and the realizations he carries from the past lives and the service that he has done to the Supreme, we have no access to that. Only Krishna knows. So in this way, the safe field is that we have to be always respectful to all. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, and His Holiness Chandramal Maharaj touched upon it yesterday a little bit, that Gita Nagari specifically, this place is meant to be a place where we should discuss these topics also in terms of Daivi Varnashrama or Varnashrama Dharma, because it does stabilize the society. When the mind is peaceful, when you engage according to your propensities, you can practice bhakti easier. And His Holiness Bhakti Raghava Swami, he was once asked about, why is it that on the farms the Varnashram is supposed to flourish? Why not in the cities? I mean, people are people and they have their propensities, engagements. And he said, it's very easy. He said, when somebody comes to the farm and all of a sudden there's, so many things to do, naturally, he would be inclined to do something that he knows or has interest in to do. So, in other words, the farm's environment is supposed to sprout that tendency of to be engaged according to your propensity. Somebody would want to take care of cows, somebody would want to take care of deities, somebody would want to take care of garden and bees and trees and that, this, the other. Somebody would want to fix things, and naturally they will be showing their talents, and also because it has to be done, somebody has to do it, and somebody who has at least some understanding how to fix it or how to do it, they will do it. So in other words, it is a little easier to unsurface that propensity in such environment. Because in cities, you just take job that is offered. On the farm, you can do the job that is available, that is needed, in one sense. And of course, Prabhupada did everything, right? When he came to the West, he cooked for devotees, he cleaned for them, he was serving in every capacity. He was doing the Shudra work, the Vaishya work, had to understand how to organize it, had to rule it, because he was the only one to rule the whole movement and guide it and protect it, and he had to teach everyone at the same time. So he was doing everything. Uh, because for the pleasure of the Lord, you would do everything. As we discussed a few days ago, reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, His Holiness Devananda Swami and His Holiness Chandramauli Swami read together the pastimes of Ratha Yatra, which is coming today. And we got to the passage of King Prataparudra, who was sweeping the floor. He was a king, but he was sweeping the road for Lord Jagannath. Okay, the broom had the golden handle, and we are very attracted by this golden handle, but we're missing the point that the lowest type of jobs you can do in India, in one sense, in terms of the hierarchy of different jobs, is to be a street sweeper, because it's filthy. There's excrements of different birds and dogs and that, and the dust and this. So, but yet the king, out of his humility, was doing it in a service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he dragged the attention of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exactly at that moment, because before he didn't want to deal with the king. But at that moment, he behaved in such a way that the Lord started to glance over him and gave him the mercy eventually. So it says that we should not be so eager just to see the Lord in the groves of Vrindavan. We should behave in such a way that the Lord would want to see us. Right? Haridas Thakur was very meek and humble. He never went to the Puri temple, the Sri Mandir temple, to get the darshan of Jagannath. He was very happy just to see the chakra from the distance. And on top of that, the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came every day to see him and bring him Mahaprasad, or arranged to send for Govinda and others Mahaprasadam to him. And how he has finished his life, constantly chanting the holy name. And when he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he couldn't finish his 300,000 names, he said, I know you will finish your pastime soon. Only thing I want is to see your lotus face before I leave this body. And chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And the kirtan was going on, and Lord personally carried his body, danced with it, personally buried it, then personally served prasadam to all the devotees who participated in the ceremony, personally arranged for the Mahaprasadam. He did everything to glorify his pure devotee. So this is the example we should drag from the Shastra, we're trying to do two things, following the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. And one thing, yes, we're trying to somehow stabilize this society by giving this knowledge in order so it lives according to some morality. When Srila Prabhupada quotes Chanakya Pandit, he was just a he was a great Brahmana for sure, but he wasn't a Vaishnava. He was just a Brahmana who knew how to help the ruler to rule the land, the kingdom. He was an expert, and that's why we have so many quotes from him. But they mainly dealing with just like how to function in a material world. How everyone should act basically in terms of morality, how to fix things quickly, right? Those quotes like if you have a fire, debt, or health issues, you have to immediately extinguish those three because it will suck out all your energy out, right? It's an emergency like that. So there's different quotes by Srila Prabhupada when he quotes Chanakya Pandit, but then there are different quotes from the Shastra, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, or Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, where it deals with our transcendental nature and evokes that dormant love of Krishna in our hearts. And after all, this knowledge helps us to overcome the material nature, the influence of the Trigunamai, and eventually even our identification with whatever we do. I'm a doctor, I'm American, I'm Indian, I'm that, this, the other. All those designations gradually, they dissolve in our pure identity of a spirit, soul, and servant of the servant. All right, so we leave a few minutes, I don't know, a few minutes or more, because sometimes on the celebration days, the darshan happens at 8:30, but usually it's at 8 o'clock. So we will go as it is at 8 o'clock. We'll see what happens. So we have 10 minutes at least for interaction, questions, additions, your realizations, please. So, seniors among us. And also same applies to online audience. Don't be shy. I know when this time for question comes, everybody becomes frozen because it comes very quickly, unexpectedly. But you can speak on this subject matter or even others concerned or something that is on your heart.
Another thing like in Pratapanda, the both Pratapanda and in Purushottam,
Mm.
he attacked to the country South India, and he went sometime to their visit, and he saw the Kanchi princess, daughter,
Mm.
Rajkumari, and he approached to Village because he loved King Jagannath. Then they are agree. Then finally they settled up and that from Kanchi we were sent to Jagannath. We looked at how the thing is. That comes from little country.
Mm.
Then they and they invented because our biggest festival the Jagannath festival 9 days. So you come that time and you can see our also and enjoy the festival. Then when they come and the Rathayatra day, in Pusa from the primary took that
Room.
then how we give our daughter who is in the sweeper. No, that immediately then go the pump will see the Indian go away and they inform the country king. We cannot give the sweeper.
Mm.
Count of
Everyone, yes.
then King Busa found when God said, Harry said, I am sweeping from Germany, not for him. Then he's crying because he great deputy of Lord of God. Then you went with account and taxi. Half time there speaking. Then when it came there, he thought, how can I keep this body now? I will do because I insert for government, not for myself. That I love Jagannath. Then I dream in Pragar Purushottam. You are dream told me to how I'm going to happen. So no more you go to again. then you're going to be free. Then that time, uh, before the king reached there, Jagannath and Baldev, the like Adam place, they went to the country, and before the king reached there, they bind up everyone and the king in defeat and everything. Finish the fight. Then finally when Purushottam came there, uh, that you have two soldiers came and we are everything. Now we are saying that we are of God and talk to you get and very accept. Then Purushottam said, no, no, I can't get married because you are insulting my God. And tell the condition, even if the unseeking victory, the Lord Jagannath going to be put their side of because the Kanji they are not the Lord Ganesh, they worship the Ganesh. So even if you be victory, your Lord will going to be behind of our Ganesh temple. So now this is puts up on victory. So it will take this as the money, but we I don't going to get married. I'm not going to because they are auditioning me and the sweeper. So I find out one sweeper and get them. This is and this Ganesh is back to Jagannath Puri and then behind the Jagannath temple, we made one temple and this Ganesh is going to stay there. So this way, they bring that from Purushottam that daughter of Kanchi and the Ganesh. And finally, the king minister is very intelligent, so we keep that and king told you kind of want three quarter give this king is to mirrors. Not going to do that. Then the minister given uh, the next year when again Rathayatra come, King Pushpam again going to seek her. In that time, the minister being there in Rajkumar Padmavati, then he told him, Maharaj, I am not going to be better than you seek her. So, yeah, then Pushpam again get it. When you did today, you go to the Jagannath temple inside, then the Burmese where Purushottam got even very Kanchi is very. So this way, that devotee कोई जाए शास्त्र में कोई power or कोई समय prisoner better but you have to be pure devotee Lord Jagannath and all the height of the meeting on the way also they give the yoga one leader called money party from Kanchi to Jagannath very little and that also Jagannath and all they ask me yoga and drink then it will have two each coming behind you can ask him how he know when Jagannath take out in the ring, he gave that he gave this one, then when king saw then he understand. Then the king came, saw Jagannath in the rings.
So
Yeah.
the devotees online, they cannot hear because it's too far. But we had just beautiful narration of Jagannath Katha and King Purushottam and what was preceding uh, the story of King Prataparudra sweeping in front of Lord Jagannath and the princess of Kanchi and the marriage and the pastimes, how Lord defeated the army with Balaram and how he uh, I came in a dream and spoke to his devotees and pure devotees. So there's a lot of pastimes that are very inspiring to hear, especially today is the day of Rath Yatra. And we have to develop certain consciousness why we're celebrating certain things. It's not just the tradition. Of course, there's a deep tradition behind it, as we read in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srila Prabhupada gives us in purports details, which are historical details also, for us to understand how deeply rooted the festival, the chariot festival is in Puri. So this is, thank you very much, very, very nice addition. And we have to have that consciousness of why are we pulling Lord Jagannath, And it goes from surface to deeper and deeper. And one side is just like giving him joy that he's riding the cart. So if somebody's driving you on some vehicle, you can enjoy the ride. So this is a very not superficial, but like a first layer of the pleasure of the Lord that we give him by pulling the cart. And then it goes deeper and deeper until those Vrindavan pastimes, how you dragging Krishna back to Vrindavan, to gopis and to his home. And it explains further in Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, those deeper meanings. And also we can see this transformation happening in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So when he first sees Lord Jagannath, he greets him as Manima, Manima, very respectfully. He's not going into that uh, mood of separation and the intimate pastimes of Vrindavan. Starts also in very like Lakshmi Narayan, that type of relationship, uh, greetings and respects. So he also, even his behavior, he has these layers. So we can learn, as Srila Prabhupada teaches us, how we should approach the deities. We start with their feet, and then gradually we are looking up to their face. So there's some respect, there's some everything, especially in Vedic culture or Vaishnava tradition. There's so many intricate details that are opening up the highest truth gradually and more intricately. As we grow spiritual, also we can absorb and understand it. Srila Prabhupada, in his purpose, he plays like a master pianist. He goes from one side to the other. He goes from very basic things for completely ignorant people to understand it, and in the same purpose he can speak about the highest, topmost realms of the spiritual world of the Lok Vrindavan. So everyone can benefit from those transcendental ecstasies and those purpose of Srila Prabhupada that we are trying to, read and associate with daily. Anybody else? There's a hand. Dina Palika. Yes, please speak.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
I don't want to
I don't
talk
want to
with
talk
the
with the
echo.
echo.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'll type it
I'll
in the
type it in
chat.
the chat.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else in the audience while she's typing? Good to see the faces that I know for 6-7 years, returning faces to Gita Nagari. Sorry, my memory on names is really bad, but I recognize the faces of many visiting devotees. So it's very nice. Okay. Anybody else in the while Dina Palika is typing, maybe somebody can speak? Otherwise, the celebration is today at 12 o'clock, supposed to be at 12 o'clock. We had experience starts a little later, so it's between 12 and 12:30, but 12 is the schedule. It will start from this side of the temple, the procession, who hasn't been here yet, for this car, and goes for about 2 hours or longer, the procession up to the hill and back. So please join in. Oh, I see. It's not a question. She just writes a comment that she liked the example of Srila Prabhupada in Sweden, how he has conquered the heart. Actually, he has conquered the heart of that student, who was so rebellious. But the uniqueness about Srila Prabhupada being a pure devotee of the Lord was that because it was genuine, his humility, his utter humility, it could pacify in most of the cases, unless there was a completely demoniac person, but it could pacify and actually capture the heart of that person. Right? I remember there's another funny example. It's in Prabhupada's memories. He was sitting somewhere, whether it was Florida or maybe it was just a hot day of maybe other city, maybe Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, I don't remember. But he was sitting, and the disciple was fanning him with a fan, with a peacock fan. And there was a man passing by, and there were lots of disciples. He was sitting on the asasa, but it was outside, and it was a hot day. And this man goes, and he was like, he sees this young American, worshiping or fanning this Indian elderly gentleman. He was like, he stopped and he grinned, and he was like, "Why is he fanning you?" You know, it was like all of his enviousness came out in that one sentence, one question. And Srila Prabhupada very casually, without a blinking of his eyes, like, it's hot. So it's like it was almost like a comedian situation because he meant something else by asking that question. Why is he serving you? Who are you for him to do this for you and like that? And Prabhupada, it's hot. His wife's finding it's hot. I- the man couldn't do anything. He just turned and walked away. He couldn't say anything. He became, shut down. So that was and there's so plenty of stories how Prabhupada was in Harvard, and I think this was by Hridayananda Maharaj. He was saying, narrating that past time that those students were asking, like, okay, you can chant Hare Krishna. Why don't why can't we count the numbers instead? And Prabhupada said, yeah, you can count, and after you get tired, you can chant. And all those students were asking different questions, thinking themselves very like, they were puffed up by their knowledge and the topmost university in the United States, and so they were trying, but they could see Prabhupada was replying like a blitz, to all of their questions. And he said just in 10 minutes, by Prabhupada calming them down by his perfect answer, they could see they're not dealing with ordinary person because they were shut up very quickly by his answers. And then they started to be a bit more humble to listen. And that's important, that unless we have this humility to listen, we cannot get anything. As I was saying, I was rereading this first canto, really verse by verse, and I couldn't believe how many times Prabhupada says about humble listening in this first canto. And because I was giving classes every day for those verses, I was like, I have to speak about it 20th time, 25th time, just repeating the same thing over and over to my little audience, just to stress this point, how important it is to have little humility, to listen humbly. Otherwise, we cannot. Then why we do it? There's no point of listening unless we take this position of a student, because we can learn from everybody. All right. I don't want to prolong it. I can talk forever, as you know me, but if there's no questions, comments, more, yes, please.
So this being the point
Jai.
discussing from 6th and 4th John 4. Rachit was becoming angry. Then Gopal quoting Titik Shwa from Bhagavatam 325-21. Then we discussed in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning of my instruction, everywhere one thing is pointed out how you have to be patient and follow Satrasana. When can you do that? When can you be humble and tolerant? Only if you are sober. Before 2 verses, you are Socham, Prajna, Vadas, Agadas, you are sober, intellectual intelligence is sharpened and otherwise, then you can. Next one is Dhira. Dhira Stapa, Dhira. Sober, you are able to control the grave. Then it will next one the same thing. The overeating, over collecting, over endeavoring, or too much stress. Then you can be enthusiastic and
Mm.
you can be humble with it. So every book, any important book, first the topics are how to be situated properly as a purpose and to shelter and accept the instruction as it comes and execute it with grave and sober as a full servant.
Mm.
And then everything is followed with it. So it's difficult.
Thank you. Prabhu is from New Jersey. He's just coming in. He was saying that in Srimad Bhagavatam class, they were discussing how, I'm just repeating for online audience, that unless, yes, the instruction starts with being humble, but before that, you have to be sober, right? And unless you are controlling your senses, unless you understand your position, you cannot become even humble, right? I mean, likely humbles you to fast because you have a disease. But this is not like a Kadashi fast when you voluntarily understand why to do this. So this is I made it towards Prabhupada, just thinking to what Prabhu just said. And it made me think also when you mentioned it, nectar instruction, that the second and the third instructions, one is positive, one is negative. What kills bhakti, what makes bhakti flourish. But one instruction in both is the same about jana sangha, that to give up the unwanted, or it's unwanted population, the sangha, the materialistic sangha that destroys you. Right? One is saying avoid it, one say not to do it also. So how important it is. Because in order to become sober, you have to be in a sober society also. And that's why sadhu sangha is so important. Because we're getting the soberness from sadhus, as you said. We keep repeating, we keep repeatedly hearing what Prabhupada tells us in those books. And as he repeats about being humble, finally you get it after many, many years of reading how important it is. Yes. You wanted to add? Thank you. All right. So if there's nothing else, it seems that it's going to be 8:30, so we still have time. But we can finish here and chant. It's okay. Right? Okay. Thank you so much.
Krishna
Congrats,
Prabhu.
Shrimad. Oh, sorry. Just a second. Yes, Jagannath Pandit.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Sorry,
Krishna, sorry.
No problem. Please speak.
this echo.
This echo.
It seems
It
that in
seems that in
past
past
ages,
ages,
Janma
Janma
was more
was
important
more
than
important
Guna
than Guna
because he
because
was born in certain
born in
family,
the family,
and so they
so
were
they were
Kshatriya.
Kshatriya.
Um,
Um,
but
but
it seems
it
like it's
seems like
supposed
it's
to be.
supposed
Things are supposed
things
to
are
be
supposed
based
to
on
be based on
quality,
quality,
the
the
qualities of a
qualities
person.
of a.
So
So
can you
can you
reconcile that?
reconcile that?
How is that
How's
supposed to
that
be
supposed to
understood?
be?
The sound doesn't come through very nicely, Jagannath Pandit Prabhu, but if I understood you correctly, you just tell me yes or no, that in the past ages it was more determined by the birth rather than guna, uh, Janma rather than guna, but then we know that the quality is more important, that is actually the determinant factor, and you ask me to reconcile that, right? Do you understand?
Yes, that's it.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Well, in the previous ages, the conceiving of the child was happening properly also. So the society as such were more qualified to give birth to qualified personalities, and quite often, the son or the daughters, they were really absorbing those qualities of their parents naturally because those the beautiful souls were coming to their families. So nowadays we have the Varna Sankara, so nobody is doing any Garbhadan samskars, nobody knows how to chant mantras, there's no brahmanas who can, everything is emergency situations, Prabhupada describes, not only in Western countries, the whole world, including Bharatvarsh. It's not just, we can see from the stories of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, how they were persecuted, almost killed, and, so many things because of this not proper, everything is lost. The good knowledge is lost, and now it's reviving thanks to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his movement. But it's still an emergency state. So the safer way to determine is by the qualities, like in that story with the little boy who came to study from the Brahmana, and he said, "What is your Varna?" The Brahmanas teach everybody, but he was curious, where's the boy coming from? He said, "I don't know." Well, you ask your mother, who's your father? And he asked, he came back. He said, "My mother, had many men. She doesn't know who is my father." I said, "You're a Brahmana." Because he's speaking the truth, very innocently, Satyam. And Satyam is one of the qualities of the Brahmanas. So it's better to look at the qualities rather than birth, for sure in Kali Yuga. In that way, we're definitely safe because we all, Kala Shudra Sambhava, we all born as Shudras, most of us. And so, but Prabhupada said also by education one can reform himself, and that's why he was doing what he was doing, initiating lectures into Brahmanas and like that, because at least they got the chance to study, they got a chance to associate with a pure teacher, and pure teacher can definitely uplift consciousness of whoever, if you're a qualified student. And that qualification comes from the qualities which we just spoke: soberness, humility. If you exhibit that, doesn't matter which color of your body is, where you're born, if you're a good student, you will succeed, right? So that we're looking at the qualities. And if we, even in material society, if we go to a doctor, we want to ensure he's a good surgeon, he's a good dentist, he's a good, he's got a reputation, the Google reviews, how many stars, how many, we're looking at those things because we don't want to be cheated. We want to ensure we receive the good product or good service. And so same applies in spiritual knowledge. But it's a little more trickier because it deals with humility, tolerance, and this is the real knowledge, the qualities. When in the Bhagavad Gita, in a 13th chapter, verses 8 to 12, Krishna explains what is real knowledge. He starts with this humility, understanding that birth, old age, disease is evil, and death is evil, and like that, accepting the spiritual master. So he names those pretty much qualities, and he says this is real knowledge. Where's chemistry? Where's maths? Where's this, that, the other? It's not there because it doesn't deal with spirit and matter. These qualities help you understand the difference between spirit and matter, and that's what matters, and that's why this is the knowledge. He speaks about transcendental knowledge and the qualities needed to assimilate and understand that transcendental knowledge. I hope that helped. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good. Yes. 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 And out of that, he says the acceptance of spiritual master is the most important. Because in Upanishads, it said you must take shelter of a spiritual master in order to understand the knowledge. And once Prabhupada said, what is the most important verse? He said it a few times, but once he said, what is the most important verse of Bhagavad Gita? And everybody was given different, Sarvadharma Parichaya, Manmana Bhava Bhakta. And at that time, nobody said that verse. Tadvidhi pranipatana pariprashanasya parikshati gyanam. Because without that, you will not understand anything. That's why it's the most important. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Prabhu.
वायुपुत्राय धीमहि तन्नो प्रचोदयात् ॐ वाग्देवी चाग्निः वृंजपाणि च धीमहि तन्नो वाणी प्रचोदयात् ॐ जगन्मात्रे च विद्महे शैलसुताय च धीमहि तन्नो पार्वती प्रचोदयात् सुब्रह्मण्यं शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरणे त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते माता च पार्वती देवी पितृदेवो महेश्वरा बान्धवशो भक्ता च सुरेशो भवनत्रयम् वृषभानुजे विद्महे कृष्णप्रिये धीमहि तन्नो राधा प्रचोदयात् जनकनन्दने विद्महे भूमिजये धीमहि तन्नो सीता प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति 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 ॐ विष्णोन्मुखं वीर्याणि प्रवोचं यत्पातिवाणि विममेरजांसि यो अस्कभायदुत्तरं सुदर्शितं विचक्रमणहास्त्रीधूरुधायः प्रतद्विष्णुस्तदपि वीर्येण गृभूनभीन प्रचुरो दृष्टाः यस्यो विश्रुतषि विक्रमणेषु दीक्ष्यन्ति भुवनानि विश्वा प्रविष्णवे सुसमे एतु मन्मा विदीक्षिता उरुगायाया ऋषे या इदं दीर्घं प्रयीतं सदष्टमेको त्रिभिः देवीः यस्य त्रिभुवना मधुना पदानि यक्षयमानसजयमधन्ति या विधातु पृथ्वीं तद्भ्यां मेघोधारा भुवनानि विश्वा तदस्य प्रियमभिपातु पश्यन् नरो यत्र देवयावो मधुन्ति गुरुक्रमस्य सहि बन्धुर्वित्ता विष्णो पदे परमे मधुरुत्सहा का वास्तु यस्मसि गमदयी यत्र धावो भूरिश्रृङ्खा आयाशः अत्राहतदु मृगायस्य विष्णु परमं पदमाव भाति परमं पदमाव भाति भूरि ॐ तवः कान्तामन्दसो धियाय महेशु विष्णुं चाक्षताम् महस्तात् पुरुषं संहरणं विवातो इन्द्रा विष्णु सुखतः वां विशति यामस्थ्याय तद्यमानाम्
Avarthamaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Swami Vivekananda Vidwan Vinayasi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishwab Satyavad Acharya Stotra Shukasi Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Srila Gaur Kishadaj Maharaj Ki Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Thakur Ki वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबा जी महाराज की श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास स्वामी की रामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा श्री गोवर्धन की श्रीमद वृंदावन धाम की नवदीप माया प्रधान की पुरुषोत्तम श्री क्षेत्र जगन्नाथ पुरी धाम की गंगा माई रमण माई की भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी हरे नाम संकीर्तन की श्री श्री राधा दामोदर की जय श्री जगन्नाथ की श्री पंचतत्व की श्री गौरताय की श्री प्रभुपाद की समवेत भक्त वृंद की विदाय गौर प्रमाण और और श्री श्री गौरांग श्री प्रभुपाद की
No, because these deities are special. They're not based in the formal way. The other is a lot of no, not one. We do daily, but it's dangerous to give it too long. Because it's fine. You know, we made them all. There's no generic like it's like no one, class of every second. No one comes. No one comes. The water is but we do. I put it in the fridge because on the big festival days, we do a bunch of them is freeze to another, like with all the things. I'll check it with them. It's